My name is Muhammad Usama. I'm doing PhD from National Institute of Technology, Raipur. My area of research is English linguistics and language teaching. My title of this paper comparing the effectiveness of methods for teaching English preposition, conjunction, and interjection. This is an experimental work. So this is the outline of the this works. So first, introduction, method, result. This is the hypothesis of the thesis. So the method of teaching may affect differently in learning of English. So based on this, so this is the research question: how grammar translation method, communicative language teaching approach, and blended learning approach effect on learning of English preposition, conjunction, and interjection at madrasa level. So madrasa in India. So madaris, which is the plural of madrasa, are an integral part of educational system in India, where Islamic theology and sciences, including literary and philosophical, are taught. The aim of the madrasa education is to inculcate the belief and practice of Islamic amongst its followers. So these institutes primarily teach Urdu, Persian, Arabic literature, and Islamic theology. Teaching in madaris is divided level wise. So hafiz, so it means the recitation of the Quran only. Tahaniya, which is equivalent to primary. Munshi, which is equivalent to upper primary. Maulvi, which is equivalent to secondary. Alim, which is equivalent to senior secondary. And Fazil, which is equivalent to uh, the graduate. So the national policy on education and program of action include recommendation of modernization of madrasas. This was operationalized in 1994 with the Area Intense Madrasa Modernization Program, which was introduced the teaching of English, science, mathematics, and Hindi as a subjects. The national policy on education documents reveal madrasa modernization as a principal policy intervention of the state with respect to the education of Muslim minorities in India. The objective of this scheme is to encourage traditional institutes like Madaris by giving them financial assistance to introduce science, mathematics, social studies, Hindi and English in their curriculum, so that academic proficiency for class for first to 8 is attainable for children studying in these institutions. So here I have used the grammar translation method. So grammar translation method is the method to L2 instruction, which is primarily structural based, teacher centered, and priority is given to the accuracy over the fluency. Additionally, it emphasizes on linguistic competence, ability of learners. And the second, communicative language teaching approach. It is contrast to the grammar translation. So CLT is the method to L2 instruction, which is primarily meaning based, learner centered, and focused on accuracy and fluency both. It also focuses on the communicative competence ability of learners. And the last one, blended learning approach. A blended learning approach is the approach in educational technology incorporates face-to-face and teacher-led instruction with the intention of supporting and stimulating learners. And they can, if I talk about blended learning, the teacher and technology, they work together as a worthy approach to enhance the skills of English. The effectiveness of blended learning approach was made evident in the studies.
Relate this with your prepositions that you're going to come down to.
Sorry, sir.
You said you're going to relate this with the teaching of prepositions, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I'll in the next slide. I'm doing this. Yes, sir. In this study, I have used the method, the sampling I have used. This study employed a random sampling method to select the participants for the study. In this sampling, each sample has an equal chance of being selected. A randomly selected sample is supposed to be fair representation of total population. Randomization was achieved by assigning even and odd numbers to each student at random The control group consisted of students given the odd numbers, while the experimental group consisted of all students given even numbers. The participants of the study, there were 120 participants, and they were only male, and their ages were between 16 to 19. The participants were equally divided into four groups. So grammar translation 30, uh, there were this is a group of 30. Communicative, this was also the group of 30. Blended learning group, this was also the group of 30. And there was a control group, this was also the group of 30. The data collection procedure, the pre and post experimental questionnaire was given to the all groups at the beginning and at the end term of to collect contextual information about them, including gender, age, and years of English study. Then multiple choice questionnaire involving preposition, conjunction, and interjection was given to complete within a time limit of 45 minutes. After completing the task, a chance was given them to read it carefully if they had made any mistake. After the lecture, they were asked to fill the same multiple choice questionnaire as they had done earlier, and the same procedure was applied which was utilized for the pre-intervention. And here I have used the four-way ANOVA to analyze the frequency of their errors. So for repeated measures ANOVA, the frequency of errors related to the preposition, conjunction, and interjection for each student was measured and arranged through variables. Only significant effect, zero point zero 0.05, were identified and reported for interpreting the findings in the series of repeated ANOVAs using within subject variables of three methods, two groups, and two tests. So this was the result. As you can see through this diagram, the control group of grammar translation. So in control group there is no significant there is no variation, but in experimental group of grammar translation method, so they have reduced the number of errors, means they have improved their learning of preposition. If I talk about the communicative language teaching, in control group of communicative language teaching, so there is no variation, but in experimental group they have improved their learning. So here we can see the variation from experimental group of grammar translation method and experimental group of communicative language teaching approach, and the last control group of blended learning approach. So there is no variation in control group across pre and post test, but in experimental group, so there is a variation. So across pre and post test, if I compare with the all experimental group, so grammar translation experimental group, CLT experimental group, and BL experimental group. So here we can see through this diagram, blended learning approach is more effective than CLT and GT. So here the preposition, the four-way interaction between method, group, test reveal the significant result, signifying that no major differences in the mean of errors across test for control group, but learners have committed lesser errors in post-test than pre-test for the experimental group. The result of the study shows GT, CLT, and BL have a positive effect on learning of preposition. Secondly, blended learning gears significantly better for learning of preposition than devoting the same amount of time to teach preposition by GT and CLT. But there is no significant for conjunction and interjection. The same method I have applied here, but here we
Was
can
it
see.
different teachers teaching this through different methods? What was the, how did you get this data? I mean, I don't understand. Was the same students being subjected to different methods of teaching, or what happened? Or you had different groups and different teachers were employed with different techniques, and how did you get the data?
So here I have applied the same after teaching. So this data is
So
pre
you are
and
the teacher,
post
you were
teaching.
teaching them, is it? Were you teaching
No,
them?
no, sir. I haven't taught over there. I have hired the teacher to teach there.
And you told them this is the method you have to follow.
Yes, I haven't told them to use. I have told them how you have to teach. I have given them you have to teach the preposition, interjection,
Yeah,
and
I think
conjunction
I'm
using the
really,
different methods of teaching.
because you want to bring in a lot of theory and difference of methods, I really wonder how will we really figure out that these are the kind of results that about the methods. The methods are all, yes, well known in theory, but I don't know how you collect the data to collect it. Tell us all that. Anyway, go ahead and finish the presentation.
Yes, sir. So here there is no significant with the conjunction and interjection. Yeah, the finding of the current study have proven that blended learning approach is more effective than grammar translation and communicative language teaching approach to empower the learners in learning English proposition at madrasa. Thank you, sir.
I was very suspicious about how this data could be collected to diagnose these different methods, and how could somebody be given such clear-cut instructions that
Yes, sir. Please let me
dissociate
explain,
one
sir.
method from the other, and then what was the nature of the data collected? I mean, prepositions, which ones of those, and which of the prepositions were problematic? So one would be really looking more into the actual collection of the data and the exercise that went into it, because I am not very sure whether we can make such claims about one method
So here,
so easily. Yeah.
yes, sir. Here I have hired the three teachers to teach English at the madrasa. So here I have taken the three experimental group and one control group. So here I have collected data using the pre and post test and made one control group and one experimental group also.
No, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes we're going through the motions of science, science doesn't result. So that's a different thing. I'm very glad that you're exploring methods of teaching and trying to come down to something concrete and all that. But yet, for us to think that one method is superior to the other on the basis of what you present so easily doesn't really come. Anyway, let's go to the next. Thank you so much. It's been nice, and I'm very glad that you're trying to get into the heart of the language teaching methods and collecting data from the field and discovering the things.
So Mohammed, thank you so much for bringing in the methods. From what
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
know, from what I'm also a field researcher and I go into the classrooms. Teachers don't follow a method. They have something called as an eclectic method, which is a blend of several things. That's one thing. Second thing is, I was wondering how much of your task, the task that you gave, the pre-test and the post-test task, how much were they matching in complexity? Have you thought of something called as task as a variable that can induce differences in performance? Have you thought of that? That's one thing. Two, there is literature on task complexity. So I was wondering whether your task had something to do with, which was leading to this kind of results, which was in that sense beyond the method. So if you are saying that this method is leading to this kind of growth, I have a proposition which says maybe the task itself had that possibility of coming with
Uh,
this.
yes, sir. I agree, ma'am. But in this study, I have made understand. I have given the clear instruction to the teachers. You have to use the grammar translation method, and given some points to them. You have to use. You have to teach them using the translation way, using the way of translation to teach them, and with in the same way with the CLT. I have asked them to, given the instruction based on the CLT method, and in the same way with the blended learning approach also.
My question was not about teachers. My question was about the task, the test that you use. Now I'm asking you to go back and
Yes,
compare.
ma'am. Yeah, the test was completely based on a multiple choice question. I have given the multiple choice question for the pre and post test.
Yeah, I think maybe sometime we would have had to look at your test. And I'm so happy. Maybe we will we'll keep in touch with each other and share the data and see your
Sure.
tests and see your results and make better sense of it all.